this session is about, a startup guide on marketing automation for customer retention, and we'll get there very soon. So we have Saurabh from Pratilipi, we have Ramesh from Netcore, he's the CEO there, and we have Anil, who is from Cashfree. Before we actually get into the main topic of marketing automation for customer retention, we all understand that customer retention is an extremely critical point for startups. We all know the statistics. We all understand it that existing customers have a bigger basket. They're more repeat customers. The 80-20 rule of the 80% of your product is used by 20% of your customers. So I would like to start with that. Before we get into marketing automation, what do you think should be the few principal points for startups for customer retention? What should they look at?
Thanks, Deepak, for the question. And for all the right reasons and for all the stats relating to retention, I don't think given the market situation, there could be a better time to actually talk about retention where the focus is to basically maximize ARPU or maximize LTV from your existing user base rather than acquiring new users. So to start with, I would like to break retention and sort of do that in a very oversimplified manner. So if you think about retention, the idea is that you expect users to keep coming back to your product and keep availing or using the services or the value that you're offering to the end user. So essentially, it kind of breaks down at two levels. When you acquire a user and when you set up the user for experiencing the core value prop or the aha moment, right? And then you eventually expect that once the user has experienced the aha moment within a certain period of time, then the user will go on to develop a habit, right? And that is when you want the user to get more engaged with your product. And this kind of works in sync, right? The funnel of activation and engagement. And when these two sort of work together at the very moment the user starts to use your product, you set up the user for retention, right? And one important thing to kind of talk about is that retention is not like a white label or like you cannot talk about it at a very broader level because it differs from sectors to sectors, from industries to industries. So it's very important for any startup or any product to basically identify what is the core use case that the product is solving for the end user. What is the problem the product is basically solving for the end user. So let's say, and at what frequency is that problem being solved, right? So for example, let's say if there is a PropTech app and you expect someone to find a house in Bangalore, and I think this is a very great example, given all the memes and tweets that we come across when it comes to searching for homes on Twitter. So you do not expect your user to come to your app every week or every day. You ideally expect your user to come to your app, let's say once 6 months or maybe once 12 months, right? Compare it with a short like video app, right? Where the frequency of the user coming to your app would be much more higher, maybe on a daily basis, maybe on a weekly basis. So it's very important that we have the right expectation, because if we do not have the right expectation in terms of what you expect from the end user, then the chart kind of, they don't really converge. They go into different directions altogether. So I think if we, and of course we can talk about acquisition as well, because that is where it starts. So a lot of times, particularly probably 8 months back when we had a lot of money and we were kind of optimizing for DAO and MAU and stickiness, then we would largely be optimizing for, let's say, cost per install or cost per acquiring a user. R2 would not be a focus, cost per D7 retention would not be a focus. So it's very important and relevant that when we're acquiring a user from a particular channel, then what are the KPIs that we're optimizing for? Because that is where, even before activation comes into the flow, that is where it actually sets up. So I think if you take care of the acquisition, activation and engagement, you kind of set your user for retention. This is what I think.
Okay, great. So I think you gave a great example of, customers come for what they need and when they need. And, the example that you gave, that when somebody is looking for a house, he might not be coming there every day. So now that brings me to the subject of, marketing automation, that, what should because you want them to come as many times as possible because you lose a customer during a period of time. So what should be the right strategy for a marketing automation to come into play for a startup? How should they look at it? And what are some of the pitfalls that they usually get into from your experience?
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of break this down into a bit of a larger spectrum of things, right? Not every, like you said, for a video app, getting eyeballs is more critical today than, somebody who's trying to rent a house or sell a house, which could be a frequency for a year maybe. The repeat frequency could be as low as that. So let's not taking the two extremes of the spectrum and bringing it more closer to the fact that let's look at a retail business, or let's look at short-term loans, or let's look at engagements where the frequency is reasonable without being annoying, right? I completely agree that you should have a acquisition strategy clearly, and there are many channels, from social channels to paid channels to affiliate channels and so on and so forth. We do some of that stuff as Netcore. And then but the big focus for us, and Netcore has been around, and we've been around as a proficon, as we like to say, without fund, and we've just grown organically over time, and we've been in the tech space as a SaaS company for a very long duration, right? So we obviously fumbled, fell, learned, and kept our customers. One of the things that at the outset, let me put that peg there, is that as long as you retain your 80-20, which is your 20% of the customers will give you 80% of the revenue, and LTV today, for us, some of our customers are decades old, right? A decade old. And that's a long LTV, right? And that's exactly what you should focus on, right? So from a retention point of view, let me just say that you cannot afford to let go, forget the CAC, the 25 rupees to 300 rupees, that's all done and dusted. Once that zone is over, how do you kind of retain them for life, right? So that should be your only goal. And sometimes we call it in our blogs the velvet rope marketing of retention and growth. Put it very simply, it's hard to acquire, so you need to give them the best experience on that. And from a marketing automation perspective, there are all channels available. You may want to pick one or two, and that one or two will change with time. What worked on SMS 5 years back will work on something smarter like an AMP email today. And then today we are also seeing quick commerce happening on WhatsApp, right? So you need to stay long, but you need to pick your channel battle very well and have a great strategy in each of them. Because the tipping point for a country like India will happen from any place, right? We have so many WhatsApp users, so the WhatsApp really caught on. May not have caught on in some other country with less users, right? And then there are bots being built to make sure that the transaction and retention experience is very low. One of the things that you have to have is the understanding of the kind of customers that you're going after. So your cohorts, your persona management is super critical to do that best. Attention recession is a term that you must understand, that the more Gen Z you go towards, lesser time to appeal and retain gets lower and lower. So keep in mind that you need to do that quick commerce thing as a norm rather than as a experience, right? Because that's how they're thinking. While you could still get away with a Facebook ad and followed up with a regular email and a call center for somebody who's not maybe a Zen X. So it depends upon the kind of products that you're selling in the market. But keeping that zone down to a mediocre space wherein you have a frequency which is more retail, experience and others, there is enough and more that you need to do on the automation side. And there are many good players out there. How you manage that is what you need to have a strategy. And to have that strategy, and there is no silver bullet here. You have to try a few things. You have to stumble, you have to learn. But then don't burn out everything on the day one on one conviction. You have to learn that as you go along and then keep adding new customers, retain the customers because they're going to pay for acquiring new.
So actually that's where I was heading next, because the number of tools available today for marketing automation, they're flooded in the market today. How does a startup decide which one is right for them? What should they look at?
Sure. Thank you so much, and extremely happy to be here in this panel discussion. Let me touch upon a little broader aspect of in terms of. I mean, I'll not delve into the details. I think we have the experts in the room here. I would come more from the growth aspect in terms of what an individual like me in his journey of 22 years has seen in India, especially in the payment domain, right? I think the whole aspect of marketing and why a customer ends up buying what they buy doesn't necessarily have to do with the brand persona itself, or for that matter, the tools that they have employed. If you ask me, a B2C purchase to a B2B purchase to a G2C purchase or a B2B2C purchase works very, very differently. And thankfully, because of the fact that, we have been in the payment ecosystem for such a long time, we have understood that each of these decision or the purchase decision are taken in very different contexts altogether. For a B2C purchase, the way a Myntra ad is pushed today vis-a-vis a cred, I mean, brilliant stuff. But if you look at the way the entire UI, UX of cred has been made, I don't think anyone who would have used it once would ever want to go back to a net banking to pay their credit card bills, right? So the sale that they have done, I mean, let me not touch upon the points and all that. I mean, that's for another day. But the reality is today, that particular brand runs a repeat customer like me just because of the fact that they have automated the entire process of telling me when to pay my bills and ease the process of paying the bills to the extent where even Bangalore electricity does not crib anymore about my timely payment. That's the beauty of cred, right? Now, touching upon that part, if I take the same example to a G2C and someone like, say, Uttar Pradesh Common Citizen Services we work with, or a Mysore municipality, or a Chennai, Greater Chennai Corporation, the reality is they're least bothered about customer experience. When I walk into a Bestcom and talk to the administrator or the senior person there and say, hey, you know what? Let me bring in the best payment experience for you, but I'm going to charge you like 25 bips more than what you're paying today. He will say, Namaskar, Appa, thank you, and you can move on. For him, it's about ensuring that the customer payment does not fail. And you can relate it back to the article that came today, which spoke about how the UPI engineers built what they built today. They have not built anything on a stack which is payment. I mean, it's a completely open stack. And today, what have they done? They have built a stack which processes more than 800 crore transactions in a month. Right? That's what a G2C journey would look like, because there you are addressing citizens whose bare necessity is to ensure that touch point A ensures that their, payments or their bills are recorded, accepted with the least amount of friction. And they're not bothered whether there is a fancy UI or UX running the entire scene out there. But when you come to a B2B, things change drastically differently. Because for me, a customer who says, listen, I would like to have an experience with my customer who is a buyer on my platform, who buys, say, for example, it's a B2B selling platform. Let me not name any platforms here. For them, what they say is, listen, I would like the experience to be in a matter where they would have taken, say, X amount of time and resource to narrow down to what they want for the day. But I do not want you to bring down their experience of the final checkout because they are stuck in a payment on a OTP, received kind of a model or timeout situation. So all of this work very differently. And honestly, the experience that I can kind of relate to is the fact that whatever marketing tools that you really look at, in the journey that you are in, whether you're a startup or an established company, the reality is that it has to be based on the cohorts you're trying to serve. If you can do that, if you understand the psyche of your customer whom you're trying to, bring on board or trying to serve, and ensure that the marketing tools fit right across the board with them, whether it is, getting them through points or whether it is getting them through immediate discounts, or whether it is getting them through a long-term association of something that builds up over a period of time in terms of the association that goes, well, the tool is a means to get the customer to understand what you offer to them. That's my thought out here.
Okay. That's great, Anil, because, you spoke about based on the different cohorts that you have and, the kind of business that you're in, marketing automation tools work very differently for each of them.
Absolutely.
So now, which brings, and, Ramesh spoke about the whole life cycle of a startup, whether you're a startup or you're established firm. Now, a lot of startups have this question that when should that investment actually begin in a marketing automation? So what is that right time to get into it? Is there a cookie cut answer, or do you think, again, it depends on various different factors? So we would like to hear about that, the life cycle.
Please.
For us, it's a very straightforward. In fact, yes, you should start it as soon as you can, because there are low-cost versions of marketing tools available. So if you're starting and not funded or in early stage and put your own money and you don't want to burn out everything, there are easier way to do it. Like there are startup programs where you get certain channels for free for a certain duration of time. If you're really early stage, if you're on a stage where there is fundamentally understanding that now you're at the start of the beginning of the growth and you've got some funding in place, or you're in the process of funding and getting the funding, and then you are also looking at a certain number to get you that funding. It's always a catch-22, like what we were told. If you prove that you don't need a loan, then they give you a loan, right? So it's like almost that. So to get a funding, you need to show that your business is growing in such a way. So you will make that investment, or you will get your early stage angel investors to get you to that tipping point before you have the Goldilocks of finding the right cohort and the right customer profile that you ideally want. That will happen eventually. Everybody wants to get there, but then you will have to get to the stage 1 to go to the stage 2. You just can't jump into the stage 4 on day 1, right? Now, first part, if you're too early, there are startup programs available from us and many others, right? Part 1, where you get free channel. Don't shy away, because it's easy, available, that it's for you to use, and that also builds loyalty for vendors like us. So in the sense that we want to see you grow. That's why we have those startup programs, part 1. Once you've crossed that stage, I think the moment it becomes a little serious, then you should really invest on good tools which will help you to do all the push notification, nudges, experience, personalized experiences on giving, cross-sell, upsell right from day 1, which means that there is recommendations already built in. Most of these stacks come with all this bells and whistles available. So you just have to, you don't have to be gold standard customer to unlock. You could frugally use them for the cohorts that you want to use them. So it's almost like rationing your money for the right profile of customers. So most of that comes out of the stack. Then comes more further experience, which means once you start getting a larger traffic of MAUs and DAUs, active users, so to speak, then you start working on where are they landing? Are they landing at my right place? I'm not talking about social media. Whatever that you want to have a plan in that, please continue to do that, because that's a world by itself. Whether you want to use Insta or Facebook to bring in your customer, or an affiliate marketer or a third party marketer, and so on and so forth. There's a world by itself. That's at an acquisition level only. But once you have acquired, the first thing is to acquire as much data points as possible without annoying, which is the first party or a zero party data, which is your email, phone number, etc. Because you don't know the life cycle. You want to reach out to them when you want to reach out to them. So enrich that data comfortably as you go along, because you need them. And you will also realize later that not all customers would like to be reached out on a phone or an SMS or a WhatsApp or an email. It could be either or. So it is best that you have all the data. And then once you have a digital body language measured out, then the AI kicks in and tells you that you send this send time optimization using the right channel. So that way you also save on cost rather than blasting on 4 channels. So I think you should adopt this. The sooner you do, better. How much you want to spend is still in your control, because it's all of them measure this entire transaction based on monthly active users, and the consumables are always easy. So I'm making it simple for people who've not dabbled into this space. So it's easy. You just have to go out there and do it and control your finance, like what my previous panelist also said. You don't want to burn everything out on the day one. So that's my view. So my answer is, and it's a selfish colored answer because we are in that space. But I sometimes feel that, what took you so long to figure this out? When I meet some of them, I say, yeah, you should have just adopted a startup program somewhere and then get started. At least you would have put your finger in it and understood the nuances of it before, getting more serious. But then I would encourage everybody to do that. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Amit. So Anil, Ramesh spoke about getting in as early as possible, and you've seen that journey over 22 years. What does a startup internally needs to change in terms of processes or people in terms for the marketing automation to work or get the best results out of it? Do you think that there is something in particular that they need to do based on that?
Well, the honest answer is nothing remains permanent. There's no startup which would be carrying, 100% of the people that they started with from day one. Even Zomato today put a disclaimer saying we still have 50% of our people who are with us for the last 7 years plus, right? That's the reality of life. Let me put it this way. I've been in the startup space for the last 12 years now. And it all started with, a ex-mentor of mine calling me and said, hey, why don't you come join us? This was way back in 2010, and it was a company called Taggle.com, Taggle Internet Ventures. So we wanted to be the next Groupon of India. But what we didn't realize was the investors who were ready to fund us wasn't really interested in the next Groupon of India. They probably wanted the next Amazon for India. Right? So we hit it bad. We had to exit. But one thing that we learned there was, if you are in a really early age startup, my advice is don't burn your money getting into paying for fancy tools. And I think, you touched upon the fact that there are free programs available, which is the most sensible way of taking it up. You should be trying it out. I mean, you can't build a D2C brand by saying I'm going to spend 10 crores or 20 crores a month doing Google search optimization. No. Go find a platform like Shopify or WordPress, or list yourself on an Amazon site or Flipkart or Etsy, which is coming to India. Make your brand available to the public. Get them to know your brand, and then start the process of building your B2C or D2C. And there's a brilliant example, right? There's a brand called Soulful. I don't know how many of you would have tried their products. They're lovely. They make these ragi and all the millet products. Tata has acquired them, right? They're now part of the Tata stable. So way early in your career, if you want to invest into heavy duty marketing, I think that's a little bit of asking for, trouble. But get to know companies. I mean, Netcore definitely has the wherewithal as well as the knowledge today to guide new age startups as to how to chart the journey of marketing as a startup. Now, the good thing is Bangalore is filled with startups, right? And pretty much every third person you bump into in a third wave coffee roasters or something is planning to do a startup. How would someone want to take their journey? Would it be on the backbone of, sorry, I think I've diverted a bit from your exact question, but just wanted to answer this in a different way. Should it be in the exact journey of saying that, hey, I am here to build a brand? No, I think they all set out to solve a problem. In fact, we did the same thing. We did that 7 years back when we set out to solve the problem of what we call as payouts. Right? India was struggling with payouts. You had a missed or a failed credit or debit card transaction, and then the dreaded message comes, 14 days wait karo, khatam. If you had made a large purchase that day and the transaction is failed, then your money is going to come back from the bank after 14 days. We solved the problem. And that's how, startups like Dunzo were able to take use of our APIs and build cohorts or very valuable marketing kind of programs on their own, where today they have been able to upgrade their customer by making them into those boxes that they wanted to even try and sell them Jimmy cocktails. Right? So there is no single answer that I would like to put into that, but the reality is The phase that you have as a startup when you mature from being a bootstrapped or a self-funded to probably a group funded to a Series A to a Series B, Series C, the right time to implement is when you see that the top of your funnel is actually getting loaded with quality customers coming your way. There is no other metric. And let me assure you, all said and done, ChatGPT might also get integrated into the next whatever WhatsApp business and all that is there. It's all happening, by the way, as we speak. I mean, Microsoft has big plans. But the reality is that people-to-people interaction is never going to go away. You might be aware, payments ecosystem is going through a little bit of change thanks to the aggregator license and all that is being set up by RBI. And a lot of companies actually have got impacted because new customer onboarding is stopped. So what do? Right? You can't say that, well, I'm going to shut shop and sit at home. You try to ensure that you capitalize with your existing base, get them to use you more as a brand. And all of this has been possible only because we also have as a company used the right tools to reach out to our customer base. Right? Whether it is through the drip marketing, or whether it is through the entire marketing process led by a brilliant team that we have, where they have been actually able to pinpoint what are the failure rates within certain MCCs, which is called merchant category codes of our business that we run, and advise our customers that, hey, by tweaking a little bit here and a little bit there, you actually get to improve your score better, service your customers better. I mean, does that answer the question in a way that you asked?
And thank you for sharing that journey of yours as well. I think it was very insightful. But, due to benefit of the time, I wanted to shift a little bit and, talk about, getting back your labs customers. And Saurabh, I'll put that question to you that, how do you think a marketing automation stack can actually help you get back labs customers or not? And if not, then what is the best way to actually acquire those customers back who have left you?
Very good question. So like when you talk about lapsed customers, I would like to kind of, segment them into 3 different layers. First is like basis engagement, segmentation and cohorting that of existing users you already have. You try to kind of predict what's the likelihood of a certain user actually moving out of your app or like web ecosystem, right? Second layer would probably be that you have users in your ecosystem, but they're in a dormant state. They're not interacting with your app. They're not using your services. And the third one would be very obvious that like the user has uninstalled the app, the user has signed out, they have like stopped. I think there would be custom solutions for each of these 3 different layers. So when you talk about the first one, that if you're able to identify on the basis of doing a lot of cohort analysis or segmentation, that what makes a user stick and why is a user kind of dropping off of your platform. And if you're able to induce similar behaviors or trait to those cohort of users, you have a very great chance of actually, preventing them from actually going out of your ecosystem. For second, the dormant state. Again, like you have the users and you have a set of tools, let's say in-app notifications, you have email, you have like you can run drip campaigns. On those set of users, you can also have some loyalty programs. You can try to incentivize users to come back to your app and experience the core, or like maybe if you have come up with something new offering for them, then you can try to cross-sell or upsell them. So that would be something we can talk about or we can do with the second set of users. And lastly, for like the users that have churned out, and I think the third bucket or layer kind of makes the majority of the lapsed or the churned user base. In that, like again, depending upon the channel of acquisition that you had in the first place, maybe you acquired a user via Facebook. Can you create a cohort of those users and remarket to them, right? While we do, it's kind of important that whenever we are remarketing to churned users, what's the incremental return of every dollar or like every rupee spent, right? How do you evaluate that? Like how does that kind of contribute to and the end KPI, the North KPI that you have with you? So I think it depends largely on the channels with which you have acquired the churned users, and then what are the different mediums that you use. So I think WhatsApp is being used like really well these days to kind of get the users back. Like WhatsApp has one of the great use cases of getting the churned users back. So probably that would be, it depends, right? Like what industry, for example, for Cashfree, it would be a different medium. But I'm pretty sure that Ramesh, given his expertise and experience with working with different industries and players, has experienced and seen that this works for X, this does not work for Y. So I think might share better insights.
So Ramesh, continue on that. If you have any
Just to
insight.
continue, you put it very nicely in 3 buckets. Makes my life easy. So there are predictive models in app available today, which will give you churn analysis in advance, which means predictive churn of potential customers based on digital body language. These are all things which are available already. And lots of people do, so do we offer. So if you really were to look at the behavior of them on the 0 to 90 day or 0 to 30 day churn rates, you will be able to figure out who's going to go out, and then there are interventions suggested on how to kind of pull them back, because they have almost lost interest in dealing with your app, or you've not done anything that's so substantial that they probably downloaded 3 similar apps to just to get the feel of it, and those 2 interacted, you didn't. So there are predictive models available even today, which will tell you who are going to churn out in the next 30 days. The part 1 of the thing. So, and the reason why I say this, you don't have to, think through this, is because, like I said, there is zettabytes and petabytes of data. There are 10,000 apps out there, and there are so many things that is happening, from a push notification to messages to, promos that are running. It's never going to be easy for somebody in marketing to sit and analyze who's going to churn from a manual perspective. So leave that to pure data analysis at the back and having a predictive churn model that will help you. Super critical, you can't do it, so you might as well not attempt, right? Because it's not easy anymore, right? Because you want volumes, right? That's why you have apps, and that's why you have mobile phones. That's why you're in India with doing such large numbers. We deal with large numbers, you have to find out a way to scale that. So that's on the predictive model. Are there interventions available? I can tell you, for different industries, different things work. I have seen in banking, when they acquire customers, the KYC doesn't happen, remains dormant, which is your second bucket, for a long duration of time. Email, and particularly interactive emails like AMP from Google provides that technology, works wonders, right? Churn, active users start happening from that rate. From cart abandonment perspective, or from going back and engaging them with a promo perspective, WhatsApp is seen to have done well, so has email. These are 2 channels. Assuming that he is not interested in your app because you've not given him anything substantial, so all the notifications that you send, after 5 notifications, the Google suppresses it on its own. These are all algorithms which are already set, so you can keep pushing, nothing is being seen by him as a pop-up. So these are all already filters available. So you need to be careful that you need to use the other channels of intervention, which takes me back to what I said earlier, which is your zero-party data. You can do all that only if you have his phone number, name, email, blah, 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 location, etc. So focus on getting that without being too intrusive, and so that if such an event were to happen, you have more ways than one to get back and add your chances. We, as a company, do work with everybody, like a Facebook and Meta, which is WhatsApp, etc. But in my own philosophy, I think that ad spend to again acquire, again lose, and again, you've already spent too much money acquiring him. I don't know how any you will ever realize your profit on that, right? So just keep an eye on that, because it's like, somebody said in the previous discussion also, it's the easiest instant karma to show your bosses or show your, numbers, so to speak. But it's a worst thing in the long run. So just keep that in mind. Yeah.
Anil, any views on that?
Well, not much. I think it was covered very well by both of them. But I would say there's one thing that is really, really critical, that is keeping the communication alive. You really don't need to wait for, till the end. कि सब अभी हो गया तो आप कुछ करते हैं, right? It doesn't work that way. Churn is a reality. I mean, in India, unfortunately, the market is so vast that no one ever really wants to kind of dig deeper into existing, but we are more focused on acquisition and growth. And that's the reality. Unlike some of the more developed nations where it's a finite base and the base is covered, so hence you better service them well and things are taken care of. And that's also, kind of helped by the fact that the entire judicial system is set up in such a way that things are much more faster out there. So my only input on this would be that let's, keep a close eye on whether the communication is happening at every single point in the lifetime of that customer, right? It doesn't have to wait till the customer is there. I mean, onboarding. A customer onboarding is one of the most delightful experiences that makes the customer stick. I mean, should I use the word loyalty here? No, I think loyalty is dead. Because the time I started working, I had like literally pull it out and you had 20 loyalty cards. Aaj ke din mein to koi dikhta bhi nahi. Payback or whatever you had in India, right? I think today is more about the gratification scenario, and obviously the Gen Z understands that more better than anyone else. So if you are trying to sell to what you call as the 18 to 30-year-olds, I would say my take would be give them something that they see as instant gratification, right? Not 50% off on an Astro Yogi. No one goes to Astro. I mean, karega kya hai? And keep connecting with them at each point of the life cycle, which brings me back to that brand which we spoke earlier in our discussion of cred, where they're doing that really, really well. I think they've put across touch points and at every point where a customer who's there understands that you are being asked for something or the other. Unlike, say, a large appliance key, when the appliance blows out, then you get your customer survey. It doesn't happen that way anymore. So I think that's my take on it.
So thank you, Anil. Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Saurabh, for your time. I think it was a very insightful session.